The community is also remembering our First Lady, Betty Ford. You're looking live inside the Ford Presidential Museum, where people have been lining up all night long to sign the condolence books for the First Lady. Just days until Betty Ford is laid to rest, the preparations for her return to West Michigan are already well underway. 24-hour News 8's Danny Carlson is live in studio tonight with how those plans are being made. Danny?
Mark, preparations for Betty Ford's funeral began years ago. We were told they might have even started back when President Ford was still in office. In just days, those plans will be put into effect when Mrs. Ford is buried on what would have been President Ford's 98th birthday.
The barricades aren't up yet, and the funeral route isn't quite finalized, but the cities of Grand Rapids, East Grand Rapids, the Gerald Ford Foundation, and the state of Michigan have been planning this for years.
Obviously, she's not only First Lady of our country, but First Lady of our city, and it's very important that we honor her in a very, very special way, and that's what the whole team is working to do.
Betty Ford will not have a military funeral like her husband, but turnout is expected to easily be in the tens of thousands.
For President Ford, we had about 60,000 people that waited on a cold December night to come to the museum to pay their respects. It's kind of hard to anticipate the crowds this week.
Hundreds of city personnel, including officers from the Grand Rapids Police Department, as well as officers from other local police agencies, will be on hand to manage the large crowds. We don't yet know the whole procession route, but we do know starting Thursday, Pearl Street will be completely closed, so the motorcade can make its way to the Ford Museum after Mrs. Ford's funeral service. Other road closures throughout the city will begin Tuesday night and go through Thursday as Mrs. Ford returns home for the last time.
It's obviously a very difficult time for them. It's mom, it's grandma, and it's a homecoming, and Grand Rapids is very dear to the family and was very dear to Mr. and Mrs. Ford, President and Mrs. Ford, and you know, it's a homecoming. And it's been a difficult time, but we're doing good.
To get an idea of how large the crowds will be, we found out today more than 2,500 people have already signed several condolence books at the Ford Museum since Mrs. Ford died on Friday. We're told that's more people than signed books in honor of President Ford 2.5 days after he passed away, but that was in the middle of winter. We expect to get an idea of the complete processional route and know what roads will be closed tomorrow. Be sure to check back with us at woodtv.com. Mark?
Thank you, Danny. Our coverage of the life and impact of Betty Ford will continue throughout this week. Here's a look at the journey she'll take back home. On Tuesday, a funeral service will be held at St. Margaret's Episcopal Church in Palm Desert, California. From there, Betty Ford's body will be brought to Grand Rapids, where she'll arrive at the Ford International Airport around 5 p.m. on Wednesday. She will then be brought to the Ford Museum, where she will lie in repose. The museum will open to the public around 7. The next day, Thursday, her body will be taken from the museum in a procession to Grace Episcopal Church on Hall Street Southeast. A service will be held around 2, and there will be another procession back to the museum where the family will hold a private burial service. The exact route of the procession is still in the works. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of planning that goes into an event as important as this one, and as Danny just showed us, the city is working to put its plans together, and we are as well. We'll have virtually every angle of the ceremony covered for you. You can watch for updates to the plans in the coming days on air and online at woodtv.com.